Okay, here's an old car. Happens to be a Mercedes. It's got a very common problem. It's hard to start when it's cold. Once it warms up, it runs quite a bit better. They're not running perfect, but what do you do? The guy's taking it to a bunch of people. Nobody could figure it out. So here I am. Whenever your car is hard to start cold, you start with the obvious things. Spark plug wires, check the battery, the air filter, the fuel filter. But this car's already had all that done. It still starts out hard when it's cold. And then it runs relatively rough. When it warms up, it's a little better, but it's still not right. It's ice cold now, so let's see what happens. I had to crank the heck out of it to get it going. It's shaking a little, but it shouldn't take that long to crank, and it shouldn't run this rough. After all, it is a Mercedes. Now, I cut my teeth years ago on these old Mercedes fuel injection systems. Seems to me that's a fuel injection problem. Now, I realize it doesn't have OBD2. I can't get all kinds of live data. I got to use my head on this. Now, I know for a fact that these mechanical systems, when they get old, they often have problems with either vacuum leaks or rotten rubber, or the part that's called the fuel injection distributor that sends the fuel to the injectors will often either get corroded or the seals inside will just flat wear out. They're very complex. We'll take the top off, take a look at it. Take the air filter off first. Germans are very anal people. Not only have snaps, but they have bolts on top of it. Why they put snaps and bolts on, nobody knows. They're worried this is going to fly off or something. They're a bit on the crazy side. So I'll take the top off here. Just off and away. One of the stupidest designs there ever was, but that's the way it goes. All these hoses are in the way. There, we'll get that out of the way. Now the filter itself is good enough. Now here's how this old-fashioned, mainly mechanical system works. This part here inside is called the fuel injection distributor. The air coming in opens it up inside. Then it meters how much fuel goes to the fuel injectors. And you'll see these fuel injectors are mechanical. Got a metal line, there's no electronics. They're kind of like inverted tire stems, like Schrader valves. So they suck the fuel in here. It's all done mechanically, not electronically. There is an adjustment. You get a 3mm Allen wrench. You can adjust it rich or lean. You turn it to the right, it gets rich. You turn it to the left, counterclockwise, it gets lean. Fits in this hole, goes right on it, you can turn it. Now you don't want to do that until the engine's warmed up. But as this vehicle is 32 years old, we know that fuel injection distributor assembly is going to be worn. The rubber seals and the notorious are going out. Back in the day, I used to know guys who rebuild them, well, you can forget that today. They're all long gone. They're even older than me. And if you look it up online, as you can see in my old data, that fuel distributor costs $2,890. See from the video, it's very complex. It comes with all these parts. It is a very, very expensive system to work on. So first we're gonna let this baby warm up, because you can't use this to adjust until the engine's warmed up. We'll wait till the temperature gauge is in the middle, then we can try some adjustments. Now that it's warmed up, this is a 3mm hex long. Got to reach inside. We push it in. Now remember exactly what you do in case you have to go back to the old settings. You're spring loaded. You push in, you feel the spring. When you push it down, it engages. You turn it to the right to give it more fuel, to make it richer. You turn it to the left to make it run leaner. So, like I said, always count them. It's a very small hole, hardly any working room. So get a flashlight so you can see what you're doing. And don't be surprised if it stalls out, because when you push it, you're pushing it down. So a lot of times you got to do with the engine turned off and you just guess. So that's what we're going to do. We got it in here and we'll turn it a quarter of a turn to the right. Now we'll see what happens. You can see a little bit richer. It really helped it out. Started up a lot easier when we rev it up. Really runs a lot better. That's one advantage of these old things. Fuel injection's adjustable. Modern cars are all electronic. You can't adjust a darn thing. You just have to find out what's wrong, replace parts, maybe take them apart and clean them. But knowing how old this thing is, I'm sure there's all kinds of carbon in the fuel injection system. So we're going to put a can of Bernie's fuel injection, the ATS 505 CRF, in the gas and then drive it around a bit. So here we go. Look at this. You just use a finger. Crazy old Germans, huh? Get this off, stick this in, and pour Bernie's cleaner in. In it goes. Pour the whole thing in. Then drive it at least 100, 150 miles. So I put the air filter cover on, we'll take it for a spin. Now, yeah, it's an old car. There's no arguing that. But for such an old car, it's only got 124,000 miles on it. Now, the engines are actually incredibly strong. Transmission is a little bit weak, so we'll watch that while we road test it. We'll take out a spin on highway here. Now the guy who owns this is no fool. This is an everyday driver. He likes to take it to go with his boat and stuff here in Rhode Island. I mean, it's not an everyday driver. He said he might drive it 2,000-3,000 miles a year. He's not putting heavy mileage on it. Got a standstill here. Nobody's coming there. Let's give it a try now. Hope this thing still goes. It does. Listen to that. Nice pickup now. It was obviously running a little bit on the lean side. Now, for its age, this transmission isn't bad. When we step down on it, goes into passing gear. Not the greatest passing gear, but there we go. Now it kicked in pretty good. Still handles pretty good. These are kind of amazing vehicles in their day. My best friend, Steve, his brother had one of these things. And one time, just screwing around, there was nobody on the highway. He's going down the road, and he just slammed on the brakes, turned the wheel 90 degrees. The thing turned right around, didn't flip or anything. They're heavy platforms. There's no arguing that. And this whole thing, it still feels stable. Doesn't feel like you're going to lose it when you're cornering, even though it's 30-something years old. As old as it is, it still has ABS, and it still works. It's accelerating much better uphill now. When we step on the gas on the road, here we go. Runs pretty good for an old car. Now that's for me adjusting the fuel injection to make it a little rich. The reason I made it a little richer was it was hard to start cold. If a car does not start good cold, as long as the spark plugs, air filter, all that stuff is good, it generally means it's not getting enough fuel when it's cold. That's why I made it a little bit richer. And check out the smooth idle. Not shaking at all now. And all that was done with a turn of a screw. Well, an Allen head screw, 3mm to be exact. It's a shame that modern cars don't have such adjustments. Everything's done by computer. There's nothing you could do like this on a modern car. I like the old ones. You can play around with, have a little bit of fun, and they can run a really, really long time. Adjust them here and there, and they continue to roll down the road. The real problem with these fuel injection systems were, since they were mechanical, they cost a fortune to build. All the stuff had to be machined perfectly to meter the right amount of fuel to the mechanical injectors that aren't electronic. It's so much cheaper building electronic parts than it is to build expensive mechanical parts that serve the same purpose. They'll never go back to making these for a regular production car. Forget it. That's never going to happen. Now, many old Volkswagens, BMWs, a lot of German cars, Audis, use this system. If you got an old one, go buy yourself a 3mm hex wrench. It's got to be a long handle. It's got to fit in the hole. Little screw turn here or there. You can piddle with it all you want to get it to run as smooth as it possibly can for its age. And as you saw, I used some of Bernie's fuel injection cleaner because as old as this thing is, they're notorious for carboning up, sludge building up in those mechanical parts. This stuff will clean them up. No ifs, ands, or buts. You can see the engine's in phenomenal shape. Still gets up and goes. And for an old tranny, it still shifts pretty smooth. The main problem in this case was the fuel injection system wasn't supplying the right amount of gas to the engine, especially when it was cold. But even when it was warmed up, it idled like crap and it didn't have that much acceleration. It's much faster now. And I'll be curious as he drives it around. You might get a little bit better gas mileage too. A lot of people have used this stuff. When you got an old vehicle like this and everything's all clogged up, it doesn't spray the right spray. Instead of making a perfectly conical upside down cone spray, spatters here and there. This stuff's amazing. After he drives it 100, 120 miles, it'll probably run even better than it's running now. Okay, today we got a Subaru Outback that stalls out. You drive it, step on the gas, it has a tendency of conking out. The guy bought it a couple months ago. He's happy with it otherwise. So let's try to figure out what's wrong here. Now it's a 2012 Subaru Outback. And as we can see by the VIN, number 4 is made in the United States. It has 117,754 miles. It's all-wheel drive, and it's a partial zero-emissions vehicle. Now, there's many things that can make a car conk out when you come to a stop and run okay otherwise. We're going to look under the hood for the simple things first. Vacuum leaks can cause it, so let's listen for vacuum leaks. I don't particularly feel any, and I don't hear anything, so let's pull out the air filter. And indeed, the air filter's all black and clogged up, so we're going to change the air filter first. Dirty air filter will give you problems. But rather than guess anymore, we're going to get out my Autel here. We'll get a good analysis of what's making it conk out. It already detected it. Okay. We'll do a standalone diagnosis. Now it's starting to analyze stuff. and we'll do a full scan. While we're doing a scan, we'll look inside. It's a nicely set up car, you know. Got a nice classic setup. There's the clock up there. Older, so it's got a CD player. Check it out. And the seats are in decent shape. The headrest is missing. Somebody took them away. Everything's green. We'll see what happens. Start with obvious things. If there's a code for a problem, there's a problem. You fix that first, if it has to do with the running of the car. Now, if this said something about a problem with the right front window, that doesn't have anything to do with the car stalling out when it comes to a stop. So we would ignore that. But you gotta start with the basics. And since the guy just bought the car a couple months ago, I'll give him a good idea of what shape it's in. It's only got one fault. Tire number 4, air pressure. That's not gonna make the car stall out. That's not the problem. We'll check all the pressures just to make sure it's safe for driving, but that's not going to make a car conk out. And after checking the tire pressure, they're all normal anyway. So one of those sensors probably squirrely on number 4. Who cares? Tire pressure gauges are cheap. Just detect the pressure once in a while. But it's dying out for some reason. We got to figure it out. Now, we're going to go to the engine system, and we're going to look at live data. A lot of live data. Start looking and seeing what's happened. The air fuel correction is only minus 0.8. It's running just a tad rich, but not much. That's almost perfect. So you can see that's going pretty steady. 2.35 grams per second. There's nothing wrong with that. So we'll just look through. And like I say, look, 1 is perfect. It's only off a tiny bit. 1.00 is perfect. So you can see the air fuel correction, 0. It's not correcting anything. It's working fine. Realize this is a partial zero emission vehicle, runs extremely lean, and even a little bit off can make the engine conk out every once in a while. I'm putting a can of Bernie's ATS fuel cleaner in the tank when I take it for a ride. Could be as simple, there's a little carbon buildup, and that'll clean it up. From what I see here, other than a dirty air filter, it's not particularly correcting anything at all. It's not overheating, the cooling fans are coming on, but this is something I have against Subaru. If you notice, there's no temperature gauge. It's got a mile per gallon estimator, but it only has an idiot light. There is no temperature gauge, and I don't like that. We'll turn the key off and we'll turn the key on. It does not have a temperature gauge. It's only got a warning system if it overheats. Down there, see? If it overheats. And then it's too late. Come on, Subaru. Put a temperature gauge back on your cars. Give us a little information about our cars. That's very important. You got a car, runs in the middle all the time, you know something's right. It starts going 3/4 and higher, you know something's going on. This stupid thing won't tell you that. It'll only tell you when it's overheated, and it's too late then. Subaru, you do not need to make them that cheap. Now, sometimes if a transmission has a problem, say the torque converter is locking up or sticking, that can cause a stall. So let's check out transmission data. There's a CVT transmission, which I'm not a particular fan of. But let's look at the live data. Voltage is fine, it's got plenty of power. All the data looks good, it's black, it's not off. Now we'll try a trick in that we'll put it in gear. Now it's got a load. We'll give it a little load with the foot on the brake, so it doesn't move, and we'll see if any of this data gets squirrely. No, it's all staying within parameters, so let's take it for a spin. I have a manual override, so I'm going to rev the engine higher than normal since I have Bernie's cleaner in the tank to help clean it out while we drive it and go and get an air filter. So by keeping it in low, see, we can make it go up and down, but what we're going to do is we're going to put it down so it revs higher and the cleaner will do its job better. The faster the cleaner runs through, the better it's going to clean. I like those fake shifts. See, it says second gear, but it doesn't have any gears, so it's kind of crazy, but that's how the engineers made it. Now we're back in first. Anybody coming? Nobody's coming. Here we go. We'll come to a stop. Put it in first gear, and here we go. Look, a hawk. You picked something up. We'll leave it in third at 4,000 RPM. The more RPMs, the more it's going to clean. This might stop it from stalling it out entirely. You can see the speed limit here is 40, so I'm going 40 in the fake second gear, so it's going about 4,000 RPMs, which is going to really help clean the engine out. And now we got the air filter in, we're coming home, keep the RPMs up, and there's nobody behind us, so we'll slam the brakes on, see if it stalls out, and nothing. Idles like a dream. So it certainly seems fixed. If you want to clean your engine and fuel injection system, You can keep it in a lower gear, even though this really doesn't have gears. It's a pretend second gear, but when we're going 40 miles an hour, we're going about 4,000 RPMs. Drive it that way for half an hour, 45 minutes. It'll generally do a pretty good job cleaning stuff. So there you have it, a smooth idling engine. It's not shaking. A little bottle of Bernie's cleaner and a fuel tank and an air filter, and the car's running like a top now. Sometimes it's just the simple things that can fix a car. Dirty air filter, some carbon built up in the engine. Because realize this particular car, being a partial zero emissions vehicle, runs relatively lean, and if you get any little bit off, when you come to a stop, they can conk out. When you're going at highway speeds, you can really lean them out. You're going fast, the engine's spinning, so a little bit off isn't going to hurt it. But with one of these, if you're just a little bit off at idle, it can conk out, and then just a new air filter and a little cleaner can fix it. So this Outback really wasn't a bad deal. 100-something thousand miles, still runs good. Now it's not stalling out, but it was running almost perfectly, hardly any fuel trims at all. Some of it was zero, no adding or subtracting fuel. So rather than taking it to the dealer where they probably would have charged them $1 million to do all kinds of made up stuff, all I had to do was change the air filter and they'll add a cleaner in the tank. And that's why I make these videos, to show people how they can save money. Most mechanics charge $150 to $200 an hour, right? There's a lot of stuff you can do yourself with just a little bit of knowledge. Car doesn't stall out anymore, easy fix. Plus now, he's gonna be happy knowing that I looked at the engine and the transmission data and saw it's actually in pretty good shape. I'm not a CVT fan, and that weird fake gear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I mean, they're faked. There's no gears in the transmission. Kind of a weird design, but I do have to say, it did let me clean it faster by leaving it in the fake second gear, so it spun faster when I was driving at 40, and it cleaned it all up. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.